Okay, hi, my name is Sewell. Thank you guys for coming to the Florida Sportsman Expo. I'm going to talk about a hobby of mine that I like to call my first true love, and that is kayak bass fishing. So I'm going to talk about some things you need to know, some things you need to consider if you're getting into bass fishing out of a kayak. First, you need the kayak, obviously. But there's so many different companies out there that offer different kayaks. Which one's right for you? So you need to do your research, obviously. Don't go to Walmart and just buy one of those cheap ones. You're gonna regret it. They suck. They're gonna hurt your back. The paddles they come with are gonna be heavy. Just don't waste your time. Go online, search kayaks. You'll find companies like Native, Wilderness System, Hobie, New Canoe, the list really goes on. Now, once you find those different companies, start to narrow down what you want. Do you want just the paddle option? Do you want a pedal option? Do you want an option where you can add a trolling motor? Do you want an option to where you can add a sail? Narrow all of that down, that way you get a group of which kayak company is good for you. Next, you need to worry about your comfort level. Each kayak's gonna offer a different seat, different length, different haul capacity, all different types of stuff. So with a New Canoe, you will get a pinnacle seat, which rotates 360 degrees. If you decide to go with a Wilderness System, your seat will not give you that option. Same with a Hobie, does not spin, but it gives you a lumbar adjustment. It has legs on the bottom that raise it higher off the kayak. But at the end of the day, it's all about your comfort. Try it out, stuff like that. Next, probably the most important thing is when you're buying a kayak, how much money are you going to want to spend? You're going to have your cheaper side, Pelican. You're going to have your most expensive side, Hobie, because they have a pedal. Personally, I think if you're getting into kayaking for the first time, go to Craigslist, find a cheap one. It's already used, it's broken in. Don't spend $2,000 if you're just getting into it because maybe it's not for you. And that's gonna be $2,000 down the drain. But once you get your first one, decide you like it, definitely spend that little extra bit of money to get something you like. So after you go through that and you pick your kayak, next you're going to need some important items. First important thing is safety. So you are going to need a PFD or a life jacket. No questions asked. No, it's not the law. You don't have to wear one on you, but you don't want to play around with your life. Anything can happen here. You know how it is in Florida. You could be outside, no clouds, sun, and all of a sudden a storm blows through. So always have your PFD. Next, have a safety whistle. Just have it connected to your PFD, have it in a safety hatch somewhere in your kayak near you. That way, say something happens, you're in distress, you're able to get that whistle fast and alarm people that you need help, and that'll probably save your life too in the end. Now the third one that I think is important, it's a personal opinion of mine, and that girl in the orange right there will agree with me. You need a net, because if you don't, you're going to miss big bass right at your kayak. I guarantee it. It's happened more than I've wanted to in my life, and it will break your heart. And you're gonna get that big bass next to you, and you're gonna think in your head, this is it. I went through the fight, I've got it. All I have to do is lip it. And you're gonna go to lip it, and that bass is gonna go, not today, and it's gonna give one little head shake, and in slow motion, that hook's gonna spit out. You're gonna look at that fish, and that fish is gonna pretty much tell you, ha ha, and swim away. And the first thing you're gonna think to yourself is, if I would have had a net. Simple as that. I don't want anybody to go through the heartbreak that I've been through and she's been through, because and Pam in the back, and Mr. Tony, and I know him in the green. Don't want you to go through that heartbreak of catching your personal best bass. So you've got your kayak, you have your items. Now, where are you gonna fish? Where are you gonna go to try and catch this trophy bass? First off, when you're going kayak fishing, try and have somebody to come with you. It's just more safe that way. It's a little bit more fun that way. If you do catch a big bass, you tell your partner to hold the camera and take the picture, stuff like that. So when you're finding your spot, you can either go to, for Florida, you can go to myfwc.com, and they have a list of every public boat ramp in the state. They give you the address, they give you the boat ramp condition, they give you the price if you have to pay to get in. They also give you amenities, like if they have showers for a park, if they have restrooms. It's a pretty cool deal to what they have. So go through there, pick your spot. Now, good part is you can go to Google Maps or Google Earth, put in that address, put it in satellite mode. That way you can see the whole area of this lake. You can see what kind of structure there is. You can see if the boat ramp really is in that good of condition that the MyFWC said. You can see if there's pads, you can see if there's cattails. You'll even be able to see, if you zoom out, if there's going to be different waterways where moving water's coming in, so that way you'll want to maybe target where moving water's coming in. Then after that, you can also type in that lake's name. And sometimes you can find different blogs that people have wrote, different articles about that lake, talking about max depths, water clarity, how the fish move during different seasons. So doing your research about where you're going fishing will kind of just give you more of a heads up of what you need to be prepared for with your gear, your tackle. Maybe you need to park your truck somewhere because it's not as safe as you think it is. Stuff like that. So now, which is one of my favorites about kayak fishing, is your gear. You need your rods and your reels, obviously. And whether you want to use a casting rod or a spinning rod when you're bass fishing, it doesn't really matter. It's all about what comforts you, what makes you feel confident. It doesn't matter. Use what you think's right. But the fun part of bass fishing is all the tackle you get to buy. Me and my mom have this conversation about once a month. She'll come home. Did you get more tackle in the mail? There's too much tackle in the garage. There's bait sitting on my counter. I have to tell her, you can never have too much bait. You can't. It's impossible. If you had 2 basements full of bait, you still wouldn't have enough. Because you need to be prepared for every situation. You need to have dark colored baits for dark colored water. You might want to have some lures, some swim baits for during the fall when the bass are feeding to get fat for the spawn. You're going to want to, what we like to call, match the hatch. Say they're feeding on bluegill in that certain lake. You're going to want to get a lure that mimics a bluegill. Say your thing is topwater and you like frogs. Well, there's tons of different hollow body frogs. There's tons of different colors. There's soft plastic frogs. Really, with tackle, your options are limitless. You can go crazy. It is expensive to buy all this tackle, but at the same time, it's rewarding when you have a good day of fishing. So when you're buying your tackle too, you want to know what you're dealing with. You just don't want to go to Bass Pro and say, you know what, this lure is $15, it's expensive, that one's going to catch fish. No, just because it has a high price tag doesn't mean anything. You can go to a family tackle store and buy a bag of $2 soft plastics and still catch as many fish as you would on the $15 lure. Maybe you'll catch more, maybe you'll catch less. But the thing is, when it comes to baits, you know your seasons, your water depth, water clarity, so you know how to work that bait. Now, I want to talk about kind of why I kayak bass fish. First off, it's a lot cheaper than fishing out of a boat. Boats are expensive. I don't know if you guys know, but boat actually stands for bust out another 1,000, because you are going to be constantly spending that money on a boat, whether it's filling up its gas tank, whether you're needing to get your engine serviced, oil, whether you're going to need new tires on a trailer, whether you're going to need new batteries. You're always going to be constantly putting money into a boat. Now with a kayak, unless you add a Garmin, unless you add a trolling motor, yes, you'll have to have a battery. Your chances for electric problems will go up. But if you don't add stuff like that, really what you're spending on your kayak is what you're spending to buy it. And after that, with the kayak, your money's done unless you're going to want to do upgrades to the kayak. The next part why I like to kayak fish is it's adrenaline rushing. You're inches off the water, you're enjoying your surroundings, it's quiet. So you're in a group of pads and you're flipping a creature bait, you're just taking it all in, and you feel that bump, that initial, all right, there's a bite. And you set that hook and you realize this isn't a dink. This is a good sized fish. And all of a sudden your kayak starts moving in the direction that fish is pulling you. Now your heart, my heart at least, really starts going, because now I'm thinking, all right, this is a war between me and you, and I'm winning this battle. So you fight it, and it might come out of those pads and it might jump, and you kind of have to catch your breath a little bit, because every time that fish jumps, that you're taking a little bit of a chance of that bass losing that lure, because that's adding slack to your line. So you're going through the fight, and as that bass gets closer, it's right in your grasp. You have your net, it's right there, and as soon as you net it, that's when just a little bit of relief comes, because you know you did it. Everything you put into it, all the money, the early mornings, you finally got to what you wanted. But this is the best part. If it's a big one, well, for me, a 3-pounder is a big one for me, so I get excited over that. When you pull that bass up and your hand's shaking like this and you're breathing real fast and you bring that up and you actually see how big it is, for me, sometimes I can't even talk right because I'm so excited about these fish. And your heart's racing, and that's it. Like, for me, that's everything kayak fishing is. With a boat, you don't get that pull of the kayak. You don't get that inside of nature, just sitting there listening and being right there next to the water, being really able to see everything that's under you, and then say you get your pictures, stuff like that. With a boat, more than likely people just drop their fish in, get ready, start casting out again. For me in a kayak, the release, it's peaceful. You let it go and you just see it kind of swim back into the depths where it came from, and you're like, all right, that was great, but I'm ready to do it all over again. Let's get back to it. Wow, I went through that really fast. Sorry. So, well, ma'am?
When do you like to flip the most?
Best time of year.
What time of year? Is there a time of year?
Oh, the best time of year. I couldn't hear you. For flipping, I would say the best. For flipping, it's one of those baits where you can use it all year round. But the best time of year would be probably the spawn, or coming out of the spawn, spring into summer. The fish are still shallow. They're going to be bedding in those pads during the spawn. Some bass are late spawners, so once that water does really start heating up, there's still going to be some big ones in it. But then as that water's heating up, they're still taking advantage of the pads from the shade they're releasing, because under there the water's going to be a bit cooler than would it be in open water. So, and then also when you're flipping, you're going to want your heavy weights. You're going to want a thick creature bait, a big worm. So that way you're going to get attention, because what those bass do when you're flipping, say you're in a group of pads, you're going to want to find that little hole in between the pads, because those bass sit under the pads and look up, waiting for something to fall in so they can eat it. So you're just presenting that bait as a bug, a frog, whatever fell off the pad into that hole, and that's their opportunity to get fed.
What size rod do you use for that, and do you use braid or mono on your flipping stick?
The rod I use a McCain series rod. It's the Alabama flipping rod. It's a 7/6 heavy, and when you're flipping in heavy cover, you definitely want braid, because you're going to be pulling. The majority of the time flipping, you're going to be in that heavy cover, like I said, and you're going to want the strength of that braid to pull out that fish. If you have mono or fluorocarbon, the stretch of that line, all that cover, it's going to be too much, and you're more than likely just going to break off. So with me, depending on the cover, I go from 30-pound braid, 65-pound braid. I know some of the pros, they do 80-pound braid. I think that's a little excessive. I think that's a little bit too much on your reels and your drag. But personally, that's how I do it. And that's the one good thing about fishing. Say I want to flip with 40-pound braid, and I think Power Pro's the best. You might think, there's no way Power Pro's going to pull that fish out. I'm going with suffix braid. That's cool. You do you, I do me. We're going to catch fish together. You can do fish however you want. There's no rules. Nobody's telling you what's best. You can have your own personal opinion about how you want things and what you want to do. And however you want to be successful, that's the way you do it. Camp.
Sorry, if anybody else has a question, jump in.
This is question time.
What is your first go-to lure? First thing in the morning, let's say we're going into the fall now, right?
Right.
What are you looking for, and what are you bringing with you?
For this time of year, first thing in the morning, say the sun's coming up, I'm going to throw a frog. I'm going to throw a frog or a topwater bait. It doesn't have to be a frog. It can either be a whopper plopper, but I'd rather use a bait that it's a continuous reel in that's going to make the action. I don't like having to walk the dog with the topwater. I just don't like it. I feel like I'm better with a 5/0 hook through a soft plastic frog than I am with 3 treble hooks on a Z-Man topwater bait, lure, whatever. I feel like the bass, when they're with treble hooks, have an easier way of shaking them out. And with topwater, I would rather have that one big hook than 2 little ones. And with topwater, mostly, if you're using a lure with treble hooks, they're gonna get snagged initially. With a frog with like a 5/0 hook, they're actually gonna have to inhale that whole thing, and then when you set the hook, that hook's gonna be in. And then say you're going through the day, you've done your topwater, you found some pads, you found some cover, frogs didn't really work. I would go probably to a 3/8 bullet weight, a black and blue bait, as long as the water was dark. Probably a Gambler burner cross, a confident bait of mine, with a 4/0 hook, an EWG, and start pitching the pads. I'd give that maybe an hour. Work what you have. Don't stay in that one spot. I'm a fast angler. I'm constantly, that trolling motor or my pedals in my kayak are moving all the time. I don't stay in one area. Do that for about an hour. Now say you're at about 10 o'clock. That water temperature now is probably going to be about to 85 degrees, which to bass, that's hot. So they're going to go from the shallow, from the middle of the night, down to deeper water, to where that water is going to be cooler. Now, not everybody has the access to depth finders, but if you do have one, turn it on, find those deep spots of the lake you're in, and look for bait fish, little schools, When you find those, get a jig, put a trailer on it, cast it out as far as you can. When you find that school on your Garmin, you don't want to put it right there on the school. You're going to want to cast out and bring that bait into the school. If you put it right on top of it, by the time you start reeling, more than likely your bait's not even going to be in that school at all. So you're going to want to drag the bottom with that jig. You could get a 12-inch worm if you wanted to and drag the bottom. And then from 10 o'clock probably back to the afternoon, I would drag the bottom. Or you could even work the bottom with a deep diving crankbait. It's not one of my favorite things to do, but a lot of people catch big bass with crankbaits, rattle traps, big swim baits working deep water. I don't have any words of wisdom for that because I don't use that. I just know other people do it and it works. But once I got back later in the afternoon, I'm going to go back to the pads, just reverse it. Go back to the pads, start flipping again. And now right when that sun's going down, bring out that frog again, bring out that whopper plopper, and start working the top, because that's most likely when you're going to hear, when you're using top water, listen to your surroundings. Right where you're at, they might not be hitting, but if you listen, you'll be able to hear spits on top of the water where maybe not bass are hitting, but maybe it's bluegill hitting the top. Maybe it's brim hitting the top. Go to where that is and start doing your top water. Because more than likely, if there's bluegill or brim there, bass are going to be in the area. The brim and bluegill are there for a reason. And if the bluegill and brim are there, the bass are going to be there too, because that's what they like to eat.
You mentioned like a fishing kayak, some things you might have to upgrade. Someone on a limited budget over time, what would be like the first to the last thing they could upgrade to? Or things they could start upgrading
With a budget.
With a budget.
If you were on a budget, first off, I wouldn't spend as much money on a kayak. I would go with maybe a Pelican. They're between $500 to $800, and they're good kayaks. They're a good beginner kayak. They don't have that cheap seat where you're actually sitting in the kayak with the foam back. They have the elevated seat. But after that, I would probably, you could add, if you wanted to stand up in a Pelican, you could spend a little bit more money to buy pontoons to go into the side to kind of upgrade it. You could buy a cheaper depth finder. You're gonna get more expensive depth finders when you're going with a depth finder that has GPS, that has down imaging and side imaging. You can find a pretty decent depth finder for cheap if you're just wanting the fish finder. And after that, if you wanted to buy a trolling motor, find a 35-pound thrust Minn Kota at Bass Pro for $200. I mean, you probably couldn't buy all this at one time, but if you were on a budget, just make your plan with what you want and knock out each thing with maybe every 4th or 5th paycheck.
What would be the first thing you went for?
Sir?
So if you just had a kayak and good seat, good paddles, what would be the first thing you buy to add on afterwards? You already have the fish rods?
I would probably, I don't know. I'm not one of those people that need a lot of stuff on my kayak.
What about an anchor, a weighing anchor or anything like that?
You could put a stick anchor or a weighing anchor. Those aren't expensive. If you wanted to spend a little bit more money, you could add a micro anchor, but you'd have to make sure that there is a bracket made for that specific kayak to add a micro anchor to it. If there's not a bracket, I wouldn't advise doing it yourself, adding one to it, because you'd probably damage your kayak doing that.
How do you set up your GoPros?
How do I set up my GoPros?
Yeah, what type of mounts do you use?
For my GoPros, I've probably been through every mount you can think of, trying to make everything perfect. But my favorite has been the Railblaza boom mount. The mount it's on a rod, and so you have your pole, and then you have your pole, and then it attaches to this thing right here. Well, it has a knob, so your pole can go 180 degrees. But then this part also spins 360 degrees. So you can move it however you want. But then where your camera gets mounted, it has a little square tray. And that also moves 360 degrees. So with that mount, depending where you mount it on your kayak, you're gonna get pretty much every angle that you're gonna want.
I have a question. You talked about the trolling motor. That's what I was just asking you. You talked about a trolling motor. Once you put a trolling motor, does that change your kayak with licensing or anything?
Licensing, as of I know, no, you don't have to get it registered. You don't need numbers on it. I don't think that changes anything, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm not one to put a trolling motor on my kayak. For me, if I wanted a trolling motor, I would just have a boat, or a little John boat. For me, for kayaking, for me, I like the physicalness of it, so I wouldn't really want a trolling motor.
If you're a bigger guy, is there any specific kayak that you would go for a plus size man?
Austin, you, my friend, you would need the Pro Angler 14 by Hobie. No doubt about it, that's the one you'd need. And that one's the Cadillac of all kayaks, Bubba, so you'd have the best one.
That's good to know.
Do I have any more questions? Do y'all have any more questions? Nope. Well, my time is about up, so thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.